Hey everyone, today we'll be talking about a standard tier list for the JP format post-festival collection. Simply because this is the format that I've been testing for the last couple of months, I guess. And you know, just to prepare for Divangasai, and unfortunately we scrubbed out, but hey, you know, it's time to at least put those, what do you say, those efforts into a video. Now, there are a lot of ride lines standard. There is no point going through all of them because a lot of them are just not very good. That's just the reality of it, right? So I'll be talking about the ride lines that I was willing to take and where I would kind of put them on the tier list. Because yeah, I'm not going to take the grade 3 Magnolia, right, for example, or Minerva, right? I actually don't like Minerva that much. But yeah, I'll just be talking about the decks that I would be willing to take, simply because, you know, I think, in my opinion, of course, remember tier lists are all about opinions, that they were, you know, good enough to take, right? So let's get started. First off, we are going to talk about Ava. Ava, it is S tier, right? I know some people are saying, you know, it's definitely not. It is definitely an S tier deck, I still think. There is basically no bad matchups for Ava. I know, you know, some people run text to counter Ava's, like, you know, obfuscates, but the reality is it's a team format. Ava just has such a good spread against like a large variety of decks, and you know, this is one of those decks that I would definitely want to take to the tournament, simply because, you know, it just has good matchups against everything else. In the hands of a good player, they'll just perform really, really well, and you know, it's very hard for normal, just like average players to beat it. Right, there's just so many tools, so many options you can do, and yeah, again, even if you tech against it, I know Gandivas run like MFDs, for example, or people run Avent Guardia because, you know, they have the anti-intercepts. Yeah, it tickles, right? Sometimes it's hard, but the majority of the times when you fight against these, as an Ava player, you'd still be like, well, I'm still getting out crit obfuscates and just killing you, so GG's, right? So yeah, that is, Ava is definitely one of the S tier decks out there, and you know, for my team, we're going, hey, we need someone playing this deck and another deck if we can, right? But at least we want to play one of these power decks in our team to confirm a win, right? And you know, Kelvin played and he did pretty well for the whole tournament. So good stuff. Ava, definitely still tier S in my opinion. And if people think otherwise, then don't take it. It'll work better in the diversity cuts, right? So you have to remember, JP has diversity cuts. So that's when you look at some of the tier lists, they might be accounting for that too. Let's talk about Chronojet. So Chronojet has been going up and down a lot. I think Chronojet, I'm basically not going to be putting anything in like C and D because like there's no point. But Chronojet, I think, is like a good tier 2 deck. It's, if I was going to rate it, right, it is definitely better than Messiah. All right, so I'll just put Messiah here. If I was to take a stride deck, I'm taking Chronojet, 100%. It just works. The deck just works. We have Valnort now that makes that I know people will be discussing, do I run the Dark States over Trigger or Valnort? I think Valnort's just better. So you have the new Regardless as well. So you have a lot of, like, you have like two good additions to the deck. But the rest of the deck just functions very normally. Of course, people have found ways, people have adapted to the deck quite a lot, but still, at some point, your scaling is just too good. It gets out of control. And you win. The weakness of the deck is it's quite linear, right? In the way you play, you always know, like, they're going to be doing this. The next turn, the power level is going to become this. So if you're playing against it, you kind of just know how the game usually plays out, which makes it predictable. And that is a weakness, right? But the reality is, a lot of times, there's nothing you can do. Also, you know, bad early game, but it's the deck's been out for so long, right? Both players kind of know how to tweak their decks. And build it in certain ways and play it in certain ways that is, you know, maximizes their chance of winning, right? Your opponent knows you're a stride deck, you do nothing until your strides. You're playing the stride deck, you know you do nothing to the strides. So you've been putting, like, you know, things like Gungaram, just like draw, etc, etc. It's still a good deck. We gave this deck to Baga, who is, you know, kind of more newish to the game. Maybe we should just given him like Gandiva, to be real. But you like stride decks, so you're definitely not playing Messiah, in my opinion. Speaking of Messiah, I think Messiah is not very strong. Well, not the strongest stride deck out there. I put it in a tier below Jet, simply because if I'm taking the stride deck, I'm definitely taking Jet over Messiah. Sure, Messiah does draw, right? You know, when it rides up, you draw. If you have like Mechani's or other ways to soul charge, you draw more, and drawing's like really good. The fact that you do absolutely nothing before your stride turns is so punishing in this current meta. And yeah, you do get to do 5 attacks, and you do get your draws, right? But you're also piece reliant in getting those multi-attacks, so that's also a huge neg. And everyone knows how to play that grade 2 game too, right? Unlike Jet, which is basically there's no way for you to fail in striding, because your ride line searches for like a Barley or a grade 3. A Messiah doesn't, right? It confirms your on-ride effect, but then you might be hard striding for your stride, which actually just sucks. You know, it just actually really sucks. And then you might have like good matchups against like, you know, Ava. You can like bind their obfuscates, which is, yeah, that's great, right? You bind their obfuscates, big deal, right? Oh no, roaming prison rider, you bind that, big deal. Chronojet does the same thing. Bottom deck, so like, maybe it's not a permanent removal, but it's permanent enough, and it doesn't do enough. That's just it. It just doesn't do enough. So overall, Messiah is just kind of like the lower tier deck out of the two. I guess it's like much more easier to play in terms of like compared to Jet. Jet, there are like little micro decisions that can kind of change the game, how like, you know, it resolved. But with Messiah, there actually isn't. Do you have the pieces or do you not have the pieces? If you don't, your life sucks. If you do, yeah, you get to draw and stuff. So maybe for newer players, the Messiah is way better. But, you know, if you want to give a deck to a new player, I think Gandiva is the correct one. I'm putting Gandiva in Tier A. The reasons for it is that it's a really, like, you've seen the results. It's it's been performing really well. In terms of how good the deck is, the reason why it's on Tier S is because when you play Gandiva against good players, Gandiva feels like, you know, it's like an okay deck, nothing too special. When you play it against a bad player or an average player or a new player, for example, man, the deck is like really good, right? It's just like, wow, just your opponent just killed everything and I draw like 2 billion cards. So in terms of where it is, like, it's a great deck to kind of top 8 with, but it's after that top 8, you might be facing better players, and that might be it might not work as well, right? In terms of how it fares in JP though, I did kind of underestimate how good it would be against a lot of the plays in JP. When you think about like a teams format in like an event where there's basically everyone joining, not simply because they're like tryharding, it's because it is like Divangasai, right? It's just, you know, you want to play in it. It's a big thing, right? There are a lot of players who are actually new to the game, or newer players, or just average players or casual players that will be playing in the tournament, where you just get free wins of Gandiva. That's just how it is. So in terms of just like like in a teams format, I think Gandiva is also just like slightly higher than what it would normally be. In a singles format, or a format where you have to play a few more games, might not be as good, right? So maybe in the English format, we might not see Gandiva do as well. But for now, I think it's just a solid Tier A deck, or Tier 1 deck, whatever you want to be. Tier 2 deck. It's a strong deck, right? It is the second out of the 3 tiers that we're using. I don't know why I've even let in C and D, right? But yeah, it is definitely a solid pick, especially in the teams format. And yeah, that's just where it should be. Overlord. I feel like Overlord was going to be my pick if I had nothing else to play. I think like Overlord, if you just give it to someone and they don't know the format, all they have to do is like turn it sideways, flip yellows, discard the promo, and you're done. If I want, like, for my team setup, me and Kelvin needed to be the carry, so I wouldn't be playing Overlord because it's not a very skill reliant deck. You're just leaving things up to fate in a way, right? So in that sense, I don't think it's like that great. But if you just want someone to just perform very consistently or just doing the same thing and not fearing anything, then I think Overlord is still fine in the current meta. It'll just, I mean, I lost to it, right, playing Zorga. If it just flips yellows, it'll flip yellows, right? That's just how it is. Let's talk about the other best deck in the current format, and that is Epsu, right? Epsu really has no bad matchups at all. It's just a good, consistent, solid performing deck that can do everything. That basically just does everything. So yeah, it's like Ava, but a bit better, right? It doesn't like, it gets like 5 attacks. It has a lot of options. It's just a really good deck. It's very consistent. I don't have much to say. The only downside about the deck and why we didn't bring it was that it felt a bit more how do you say, like, harder to play. I feel like I wouldn't be able to get, you know, not only get like get the skill level in time for the tournament to play Ebisu, you also have to get the cards. Not a very cheap deck. There's a lot of things going on with it. In terms of diversity cut as well, we're just assuming everyone would have brought Ebisu. Everyone would have bought like Ava, so let's kind of bring two decks that people would less bring. Unfortunately, you know, a lot of people brought Chronojet as well. But yeah, that's the reason why we didn't bring it. But you know, if you want to make a meta team, you can go Ava Ebisu, and you've got a solid team, and just make your third anything else, and I think you're fine. I don't really have much to say about Ebisu. I think the results speak for themselves, and it's just a good deck. It's just. There's nothing wrong with it. It's similar to Ava that I feel like there's just not really any bad matchups that it has. Maybe there's a few more bad matchups for Ava, but for Ebisu, not really, right? Not really. And it can just do everything, you know, retire and everything like that, etc., etc. So, yeah, not much to say. Next we have is Rejeweled. I actually rate Rejeweled around like B tier, like the lower tiers a lot. It's just a very inconsistent deck. I didn't really like it. You run out of steam against good plays. You're playing Rejeweled and like, okay, just PG the Vanguard, and then hope you don't, you know, luck sack your way into anything else. Yeah, that's kind of it. I really don't like Rejeweled. It's like you're paying an expensive deck just for like very, very little power, right? Because if you really wanted to play a master deck, Zorga is just like better. I think like Zorga is like a really solid pick. This is what I picked for the tournaments. And the Alchemagic power and like the Persona Ride power is like insane, right? It is such a huge hand shred. It's like crazy, and you get 4 attacks now. It's like there's a reason why everyone started picking this up. It can rush as well. You can Tekken retire, which I know I was really considering of doing that, but I know someone actually did. And you have multi-attack. It's just people underestimate the power level that masks really get. You actually have a very decent removal ability as well, like removing the other Zorga to get back an order or a unit just makes it so every single turn you're performing, right? You're doing what you need. You can just, every turn you're persona riding, every turn you're just like just killing everything. It's just so good, just so good. Zorga's like just definitely in the very, very playable tier, and yeah, that's just my thoughts on it. And the next one that goes here is also Hexa Orb. Hexa Orb was also another deck I was really considering on bringing. Alas, in the end, I just took Zorga because, hey, different if I had it. Just for his one. Otherwise, I need to buy a new Hexa Orb deck. Hexa Orb is like really, really good too. You can always just stack your triggers. The reason why I was like really considering this, and I kind of really wanted to play it too, was because you can like just play the new Overtrigger Valnort, and just like if you stack that, just your opponent's likely dead. The power levels that you get with this deck is also insane. It's like on your like Persona Ride turn, you're standing your front row to get that 5 attacks, but then they're also getting like insane amounts of power. So if they have to like PG the Vanguard to order just like not randomly die. Like that's the safest way of living. But then they have to PG one of the Reguards at least, right? And that's also that's also when you have to deal with the other stuff before too. So very, very strong. And just overall, like if people don't respect what you top deck check, you say they can just randomly get double crit and just quick win for the game, right? So Hexa Orb definitely one of the really, really strong pick in the current format too. Next we have is Welstra. So I actually don't know where to put Welstra. Welstra was definitely a pick that I was thinking of going into the format, simply because diversity cut's really good. It has retire, and retire is very, very good in the current format. Against like Gandiva as well, you leave nothing on the board, so they can't retire anything. And sure, like they can still like bind stuff, but you also hand shred quite a significant amount too, right? It's not like you get rid of this stuff, you do 5 attacks, but your 5 attacks are really strong. Your hand size is like pretty decent. You draw a bunch of cards. And in terms of like the diversity card, I think it'll be very, very good because hardly anyone plays Welstra. And I think one team made it through diversity because they were running Welstra, right? You'll see in one of the top 16 brackets. I think Welstra is somewhere like in the A or the B tier. I think it's probably more like the B tier at the moment, simply because the other decks just gain so much more power. Having like masks, for example, just make sure It's like your grade 3 turn like insane. Persona Ride wise, like you always confirm Persona Ride, but then you have like things like Hexa, which like makes the Persona Ride just slightly better. But you know, Welstra does have like the retire and like the minus pound, and just the amount of overall like ability to just like shred your opponent's hand. It's still really good, right? So I'll probably put in like the high B tiers. These aren't really in any single order, by the way. If I said something is like a high tier, then just believe it, right? Maybe I'll just move it to the front. But this is where it should be. I think like if I was to order them, right, Hexa will be just higher than Jet, in my opinion. The next deck I have is Avent Guardia. Avent Guardia, I was gonna take it, but I really have no other options. I don't really like the deck too much in terms of, like, again, like restanding Vanguards for Brandgate, that's a plus. That's really good. But I just feel like if I was to take this deck, I would just rather take Overlord because, you know, just they both have great overtriggers. Overlord just restands an extra drive. Overlord is actually less reliant on Persona Ride, but you do want Persona Ride. But if Avent Guardia doesn't get Persona Ride, the deck is just trash, just absolute garbage. So I guess one thing with Avent Guardia is good is that you have the new countercharger that also draws things like Hathaway, so that's good. That's a nice plus. But just in terms of like, it has nice strategies that can kind of counter Ava as well, so that's good. But overall, I don't know. It's just it just didn't swing as well for me. I probably would have taken it over Messiah though. Like, out of everything here, like, I think Jewel is like the lowest. This is actually this is in order. Alright, I lied. This is actually in order. I've subconsciously put it in order. But this probably should swap around. Okay. Alright. I guess the last deck that I was considering was also a Welstra. And you guys might be going, are you crazy? Well, I actually did buy all the pieces for Welstra minus the Festival Collection stuff. And I think a lot of people can attest to that. I did buy Yuikas. So I have a bunch of Japanese Yuikas that I'm not using. Yeah. I don't know what I'm going to do with them. Maybe I'll just resell them. The reason why I didn't bring Welstra, because I could not get the cards, right? Insane idea to put them in Festival Collection that is sold out the first day of the event and is legal for the second day. So I actually couldn't. I was playing in Tri-Regulation. So because I was playing in Tri-Regulation, all the tryhards that were playing only on the second day bought out all the stock. So that's why I couldn't play it. But I did have all the pieces ready to play it. Well, this is pretty interesting. I'm not sure if I would have put it in the top A tier yet or the high B tier, right? There were quite a few decks of the list that did well, right? But remember, we do have a diversity cut in Japan, so I mean, you kind of have to factor them in, but factor that in. But in terms of like personal performance with it, you know, I'm still not super not convinced on if it's like an A tier or a B tier. The main reason why I was gonna bring it if I was to play it was because it's just it's a solid deck that, you know, will work. That should have worked pretty well in Diversity Cut simply because it had been harder to get. You can also rush pretty well. So yeah, it seems like an okay deck. I feel like I want to put it like high B. I don't want to give it the A yet, but I feel like, you know, maybe it should. I think we still have to wait on a few more results though. I think we might have. I'll put it in high B. I'll put it in high B for now, but we'll have to we'll just wait for more results. That's simply it. And that is basically that one deck that I would be willing to take from Lyrical Monastery to the tournament. So I guess that is pretty much everything. I don't think there's any other decks here that I would take at all. There's so many ride lines, right? Like, yeah, not much else to say. These are the decks that I was considering for Daivangasai, and this would be like the tier list where I would put them. Every single one of these decks that I listed here, I'll play them. No doubt about it. These are like kind of like the point differences, right? So maybe the tier S is like okay, they're just better, right? They're just better. But then the A and Bs are kind of like, you know, small differences, or smaller differences, and either of them will perform, especially in a Japanese format because of diversity cut. So let's just finish it off again. S tier, Epsu and Ava, right? 100%. No bad matchups really. Overall, just very solid. Can perform every single time. Then we have Gandiva in tier A, just a great deck overall. Good for newbies, right? Good for punishing newbies. Basically the skill check of the entire format, right? And then, you know, if they pass the skill check, at least you still have ways to play to get power and just kind of scale that way. Zorga, insanely strong deck. Hexa as well. Basically, these two decks, I'll just 100% rate of Chronojet. They just have one, like Zorga has options with power. Hexa Orb just has power, just so much power. And then Jet, you know, the stride deck of the format. If you want to stride, you play this one. So that's like it has good scaling, some removal as well. So yeah, very nice. And then the rest of B tier is kind of the decks that in the end I probably wouldn't have brought, but I would play. Right, I would still play because, you know, I would actually just. I'll put it that way. I don't know. What I kind of want to put these two up because I would have brought them, but then I didn't. But yeah, but this is kind of where I think the format is at. If you have any one of these decks, right, I think you're fine, because they're just all good. And then if your deck is not here, then I don't know. Maybe let me know in the comments that I'm saying that I'm wrong, and I'll see you all tomorrow then. Bye.